Planning board meeting into session. There's been a request that the planning board introduce themselves. So I will start. I'm Judy Tilton, I'm the chair.
Christine Dembitsky.
Eric Pyron.
Jane Alden.
Juliet Harvey.
Peter Fogg, ex officio.
Thank you. The first on our agenda is review of the June 27, 2017 and July 11, 2017 minutes. And we're going to postpone those so we can expedite other things. So that brings us to Planning Board Case 1704, continuation of site plan review. Proposal from Robert Callahan to operate an adult care facility at 100 Autumn Drive in the Rural Agricultural District.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I'm going to recuse myself as I was formerly employed at this location.
Thank you, Mr. Fogg. From what I understand, we have an amended site plan.
Yeah, I mean, we had the plan that was submitted a week ago. Then a plan was just handed to me with some changes in response to the second round of third-party review that we received yesterday. So we have full-size plans. So it's like 3 full-size plans of something that is brand new. So I don't know how you want to address that.
Do we wish to review that?
I mean,
Unless you want to postpone until it's time, until you've had time to review. It's up to the board, what the board wishes to do.
I think we should postpone.
Okay, yeah.
I think we should postpone.
Is the audio working all right up there?
Yeah, it's just,
Thank you.
Yeah, I make a motion that we postpone until the planning board's had an opportunity to review the last plans issued.
Before you, sorry, if I could interject before you make a vote on that. I mean, I think there are some items that we could discuss before continuing, if that's what you're, if I understood the motion correctly. I mean, there's one thing that I guess I'd like to mention. Again, I don't mean, if that's okay with you, I realize I interrupted right in the middle. Okay. Something that it has, I guess, been discussed, and I've discussed with the applicant, a couple members of the applicant's team, is I think that you guys need some sort of drainage analysis, something talking about stormwater and drainage. And I did express that. I shared that with I think one of the applicants, a couple members of the applicant's team again. Sorry, I'm redundant. So if you are going to continue, I would also suggest you guys discuss the possibility of also passing along the word that some kind of drainage analysis needs to be included. So.
Do you wish to rescind your motion?
Yeah, I'll rescind my motion until we discuss the drainage issue.
Okay. Where is Mr. Callahan? Yeah. Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
We want to know what is happening with the stormwater management plan.
Well, good evening. My name is Sean O'Connell. My colleague Karen Forbes had been here for you earlier. She's on vacation this week, so I'm here for her. As to the stormwater management plan, I think what we would say is that, well, you have the letter from Mr. Keach that narrowed the issues down to 4 in the site plan review. That doesn't appear there. And all the site plan was approved in 2014. I think it was 14. The November 2014 meeting was the one where it was approved. The proposal before you now does not contemplate any changes or anything affecting the exterior of this space whatsoever. Not at all. And to the plan, I know there was a new plan submitted today. That plan was submitted, so the board understands, in response to Mr. Keach's letter of the 4 issues that he raised in that letter. We don't necessarily need to review the plan in order to review the items that he raised in his letter. We just did it on the plan to address and accommodate the things that he raised there. So we would say that, and I don't believe that the stormwater runoff is part of the required regulations here in Tilton, and I think that what we're asking for has absolutely no change or impact on the exterior of this space at all. So there will be no change in what it's been or what it's always been in terms of stormwater.
You will note that as of the last few years, we've been asking each applicant for that as best practices for our local ecology have come up.
It is depicted on the plan. You'll see the stormwater runoff and where it goes into the catch basins. It does appear on the plan. In fact, I think it appeared on the previous plans. I know it's on this one too. But it does show the stormwater runoff in the plans that our engineers prepared.
A stormwater management plan tells us where the oil water separators will be. What is the plan for taking care of those?
I'm aware of that. That's why I raised the issue that what we're doing today is not, it doesn't, if anything, the impact that would be relevant to that becomes significantly less than what had been before, because the applicant has dropped the plan to a 9-guest facility with 3 staff equals 12
That does not change stormwater. It doesn't matter if there's 100 people in there. Stormwater runoff is the same. Doesn't matter how many people are in the building.
I understand what you're saying, and just offering my clients with what that's relevant.
As an example, we used to require a preparation for a 50-year storm. We have changed in the last 2 years to require stormwater management plans for a 100-year storm. I know in that area in particular, there was a change in the topography because the intersection was changed, it was paved, and that in itself would cause a difference in the stormwater and the runoff.
Which intersection is that?
The one right up at the top of Autumn, yeah. It was paved. It was not paved before, and it's Perkins Road. It's quite a ways back now that the paving exists there. I come over there once a week, as you know, Bob,
Yeah.
so I'm aware of that. So.
Yeah.
Does the board wish to do?
So.
It's up to you guys. It's a board decision. Well. Why don't we have them address what they have done? So who's going to address what has happened?
So
Who's going to address you said there's 4 points that,
I will do that. So yesterday, the town received a letter from Mr. Peach, which was the second third-party review. We addressed the issues in the first one, and this one followed. His first issue on page 2 of his letter relates to the usage of the septic system, which presumed a continued use of the sports facility and other uses other than the adult activities center as well. My client has dropped all, as of September 25th, I believe, 28th, This year, we'll drop all use of the athletic center, it's an independent thing. Instead, the only use would be the recovery center, but that has been reduced to 9 guests with 3 staff people. So that would be the entirety of the use, would be 12 people maximum, so not all of the people will be there at the same time. The second issue is the parking. Again, on page 2 of the letter, about the sufficiency of parking on the site, the 95 spaces on the site. The proposed use now is for 9 guests, again, and 3 staff. There will be 12 parking spaces. There could be times when people were visiting family, people were viewing the facility, decided whether to go, things of that nature. But we don't anticipate the use would be probably more than ever in 15 or 16 cars, which would be fewer spots than exist in the existing lot, the paved lot in the front of the building. The third item on the bottom of page 2 relates to snow storage. And on the plan that we had our engineer prepare last night, that snow storage has been addressed as to two different spots where the snow storage would be addressed. However, given the reduced use of the parking, the plowing of the lots in the totality would be less necessary, and snow storage would probably be less intense. And the fourth issue was the lot coverage, 40% of lot coverage. And that issue has been addressed, and my client has agreed to purchase 1.5 acres of adjacent land, which will correct the ratio problem and make it compliant. So for the 4 issues that are in the letter from each, I think we've addressed all of them.
Does the board have any questions?
We're talking about the parking and how reduced it is, but then you mentioned visitors can come and also outside people can come view the facility, so you're really never going to know how many people are going to be there at one time?
Please identify yourself.
Sharon Downs with Bob Thomas for the project. What he's saying is we're going to have, obviously, presenters come to our facility. At that time, our staff will not be on the site, so those are a drop of 3 and maybe an addition of 1. There's also service people that will come and inspection people that will come to the facility. So it's not regular or frequent visits, but there are visits to the property by others. Intakes, folks, there will never be an instance, as we told you before, where people who are not coming to the program will visit that site. They will not come to the rooms and travel up that road and all that kind of thing. That is happening off-site. But service people coming to deliver goods to them, they are going to be obviously coming. We just wanted to recognize that and point that out to you.
So family visits off-site somewhere else?
We have not planned out the family visits in their entirety, but those will be scheduled such that it's not a communal gathering at our place, and it won't be a regular, it's ancillary to the business, but it's not a regularly, it's not happening every day.
We also don't anticipate that all 9 guests would have cars. We don't know that, but that would be our reasonable expectations. It would probably not be a car for every guest.
I just have one question. Any more word on licensing? Karen, I think, do you know any more about the plans for licensing?
Yeah, we absolutely, as we have said all along, will seek a license. New Hampshire has 1 license, and it's designated as a medical license for both non-medical. We cannot move forward without an approval from the town. But we continue to be in communication with them. We just can't move forward, and we cannot enroll with insurers until such time as we have an approval here and become licensed with the state.
Okay.
What's the actual name of that license?
Excuse me?
What is the actual name of the license?
It's DHHS medical licensure. Department of Health and Human Services. As we stand today, though, I do want to remind folks that as we stand today, we're not required to have a license. to
Yeah, we
operate.
know, but we were just curious as to whether you knew any more than you knew before.
We
Okay.
just can't move forward without it for the town.
At one point, you had said there was going to be a wellness center there also.
Yeah, the program, in terms of the, as Sean was explaining, we've eliminated public use of the gym as of September. And so part of our program for our guests will be use of that area of the building. It will be built into our program.
And security, could you just review again what security measures are going to exist at the facility?
Yeah, Bob Callahan, we'll secure buildings with cameras. Police department's been up there, the fire department's been up there. If there's any issues with that, we'll get a call, otherwise we'll handle it from the outside.
We did previously submit policy and procedure for background checks, safety and security. You should have those in your hands, you'll have them for what allowed.
And can you review your other businesses, your ancillary businesses up there? Are they going to
I
be
got a watering
eliminated?
company in there, and it's just basically a phone and the desk. I do it out of my house mostly anyway, so at that point I wouldn't have a desk in there for that.
So there are no other businesses at all on that facility?
There's a massage therapist. She'll be part of it, but she will not be up there running cold or with her business down. You know, it'll be part of the therapy.
No, not therapy. It will be it's going, all of the things that she provides will now become services offered through the recovery program.
That makes sense. The only concern I have now is the stormwater management.
I'd still like to review the plans.
And we need to review what was turned in today, so those two things.
Do you have any other additional questions?
On this, on the septic, it doesn't say how many it can handle. I see 1,300 gallons and all this. What capacity is that for?
I didn't hear you.
On, yeah, septic?
Are your microphones on? We're gonna put
Yep,
here.
yeah, can you move it?
The current septic, how many people does that handle? It just talks about gallons and such like that.
To 9 to 12, the state regulations.
9 to 12 only?
They can handle more. The septic fields are built bigger. That's
Current
a
is
lot
for
of
9 to
places.
12 people in the facility.
12 people, definitely, no question about it.
So no visitors or anything.
We're actually under the gallons per day for 12 people, and we're going to stay that way. We're at 1275, and we think we'll be at 1310, I think.
Well, if you have visiting days and such, there's going to be more people than 12.
When we spoke with the water board, the intention is that 12 will always be 12. There can be a mix of different types of people in that number of 12. Remember, we're operating, it's 24/7.
Do you have any thoughts about putting some sort of screening as far as like hedge between the road, separating your facility from the residents and the road, sort of for privacy? Just- Have you thought of that?
We've got a pretty good sized hedge going on up our drive. We've got a nice entrance.
Yeah.
It does overgrow in the summertime.
Oh, no.
It's going to be kind of inside. It's not like we're all running around outside up there.
No, but it is, I mean, I drive back there, and
Yeah.
it's pretty much see who's coming and going, and this is just my thought. It's not representative of the rest of the board.
We can talk about it initially.
I just wondered if you, yeah. thought about it. Thank you.
Back to the septic for a minute.
Yep.
It's my understanding that if in the future you move from 9 to say 24, we'll need an amended septic design?
So, I'll address that. What our plan is if we do grow, or we intend to grow, our plan at that point is to look into town services. And that's what it's going to. We decided that it would be a better option all the way around to resolve that issue. And that's why we scaled back now, because we know the number at which that makes sense for us and for the town.
Back to, no.
Got the list.
Just use stormwater plan.
Stormwater district.
All right, we'll open it up to public comment.
And we're going to talk about the time.
Yes, we're going to limit to 2 minutes. Please stay succinct, on topic, respectful. First one up is Tracy Tarr.
Oh, we're for a year later.
Oh, well then, have a good time.
You don't want to speak to this one?
And Karen Ober. Thank you, Karen.
Karen Ober, Samberton Selectman. And I just wanted to address a couple of issues. It seems like at the last public hearing, we were talking about the possibility of a wetlands issue, and I don't hear that being discussed at all this evening. And I guess maybe the plan for the facility has now downsized, because originally they were talking about 30 residents being there at one time.
With staff.
Is that plus staff in addition to that? So what I'm hearing now is that this is now much smaller facility? Yes. Okay. I guess I just would like to address a few issues. Each time this property has had a change of use, it has really morphed from the original rural agricultural that it was to what it has now become. Far different from the original dairy farm that it was, and people in that area who purchased property thinking that they were living in a country setting. I know that in recent years we've had issues with one of the neighbors who, because this property has now been clear cut, and there were trees there, and there's now a lot of light pollution for the neighborhood. That is a concern of mine. And I know that there was requiring additional lighting because of, for security reasons for the property, which is going to be an additional detriment to the residents. Lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that Samberton's police and fire will get to this facility if there's issues much faster than Tilton from their current positions. That is an issue that's of concern to the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Chertoff. So can you hear me okay, Bob Chertoff? Oh, you're good? Okay. Let's see, some people didn't put a yes or no, so I'm going to assume no. So when we go through, if you hadn't put yes or no, just raise your hand and let me know. Mark Latham?
Letters to the planning board member.
I would like to take my 2 minutes to read it and then be available if there are any questions for clarification.
Could you give one to Dari for the record, please?
Is this the same letter you submitted previously? Okay. Thank you.
And part of what this letter addresses is I'm hearing from the applicant that the reason why they're not coming forward with information from the state is because they're waiting for information or clearance and approval from you. And my suggestion is there's an obligation there to provide what those requirements by the state would be before they seek licensure. Dear Planning Board members, as a concerned Samerton resident and a state licensed healthcare administrator, I continue to have many unresolved questions pertaining to this applicant's proposal. 1. In the applicant's submission of operational procedures under, quote, staff ratios, it is stated, quote, our facility will practice standards for staff ratios as set forth by the state of NHDHHS, quote. As in most of the written procedural materials submitted to the board by the applicant to date, the definitions are continuously vague. I am assuming that the, quote, state of NHDHHS is an acronym for the State of New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. This would be appropriate, as this is the state department that has regulatory responsibility over all medical health care facilities. I strongly believe that the applicant has an obligation to submit to the board a copy of the practice standards for staff ratios as set forth by the State of New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. To simply propose compliance to rules that have not been submitted to the board in their great detail for review is unacceptable. Number 2, as mentioned by being under the guidance of the Department of Health and Human Services, a medical health care facility is not appropriate in a rural agricultural district. Number 3, under the applicant's presented, quote, resolution of disputes grievance process, unquote, there is language that is too vague to qualify for acceptable procedure and process. Examples are, quote, all reasonable efforts, quote, will make every reasonable effort, quote, will make all reasonable efforts. I believe the applicant should be obligated to submit to the board the detailed definitions behind such vague language and exhibit the clear process on how the program would operationalize the now clear definitions. 4, under the applicant's presented, quote, background check policy and procedure, it is stated, quote, at the time of intake, this comprehensive screening will include the following: criminal verification, criminal search, comprehensive screening, registries, reference verification, medical physical screening. It is my hope that the board will seek written assurance that the thorough and complete results of all these important and appropriate screenings necessary for the safety of the resident and all that are potentially in contact with are reviewed prior to any offer to a potential resident for admission. Meaning, these checks, which are federal checks, are intense and they take time. And not to have someone be a resident before the results of those screenings that are appropriate are done. Thank you.
Byron Bedard.
Good evening. Thank you. My presentation's changed a little bit since what I heard from the applicant tonight in terms of their changes. But I want to start with what you folks start with tonight, which is the stormwater management side of this thing. Because regardless of what they have changed, it still is important with respect to this property and respect to my clients who are abutters to this property, because there has been increased stormwater runoff that has been affecting their property over the last several years. My clients are the Meads. They live sort of across the road from the facility. And so with that said, going back to 2014 when they sought to expand the parking out there, even though the parking didn't have pavement added to it, it was gravel. Gravel is still an impervious surface. It's not as impervious as asphalt is, but it's by no means as beneficial as forest land, grassland, things of that nature. So the need for the stormwater management study still exists, still should be conducted. And in light of the applicant's recent change to the plan, and by that is abandoning the sports complex and ostensibly abandoning any other use of the property other than for the rehab facility, if you will, then there should be a serious look taken at whether or not some of that parking area should be reclaimed and returned to a pervious surface to collect stormwater runoff. In addition, there should be attention paid to there should be a new parking yield study done, and it should be identified which parts of the parking that are going to remain are going to apply to the yield study. I say that for two reasons. One is a number of the spaces shown on the plan do not comply with your zoning. They are too small. Your zoning requires parking spaces 19 feet 9 inches long, 9 feet wide. A bunch of them are 18 feet, give or take a few inches. Similarly, your travel lanes require for one-way 18 foot, for two-way 24 foot. There are travel lanes shown on the plan for two-way that are 18 foot at best. So those things need to be addressed and corrected. And if anything that has been shown from the last time you folks went through this back in 2014 and 2015 is that the applicant is not necessarily real great at follow-through, since the amended driveway permit and the lighting plan didn't come in until, I believe it was last month or the month of May, almost 2.5 years after their approval and those requirements were imposed upon. So those things need to be addressed and not be accurate. If they truly are abandoning the sports complex and other business uses, you should have a formal concession that is presented to the planning board and noted on the plan of the abandonment of these uses. Because one of the things that has frustrated my clients over the years with respect to this property is this sort of amorphous, ever-changing nature and not yet quite being out of what it was before or what it's going into. I know that seems strange, but this property seems to have grown by bits and pieces and then leaps and bounds, and the oversight on it, and this is no fault of this board, has not been what you would necessarily expect for the size and magnitude of that facility. By that, we're talking about the various businesses that have gone into that building beyond the sports complex, and whether or not those businesses are going to be allowed to exist as separate businesses, or if they simply have to be an integral part of the treatment facility. And by that I mean, will the massage therapist be allowed to see people who are not treating there on the facility? Will the embroidery business be allowed to continue to sell out of those offices? Will any of the other offices that are not being used be allowed to be rented out to other folks? If the applicant is sincere in what he is claiming, it should not be a problem to abandon those uses. And should they choose to try and expand the facility someday, they would come back to you to seek use of those parts of the building for expansion of their business. Let's talk about the septic now for a minute. Frankly, I agree with Steve Keach that there needs to be a new septic design out there. You know, anecdotally, if you look out there, it appears that septic could very well be in failure out there. And by that I mean it looks wet out there. It has been mowed, doesn't appear to be. All those things. Now, according to the selling report, which they provided to you, the septic should be able to handle up to 1,300 gallons per day. And they proffer to you in the selling report that the future use of the facility as a 9-bed, 3-employee facility will generate 1,275 gallons a day of wastewater. Well, that is assuming, A, that those other businesses don't remain in the property, because now you're adding some more employees on there. And I also believe the selling report shorts the calculation by 120 gallons a day. The reason I say that is the report only lists 3 employees. The 3-employee standard of 20 gallons per day is designed on a regular day shift employee that is on for an 8-hour shift. If you are having 24-hour care there, you're essentially either having that employee there, essentially living there, or you're having 2 or 3 shifts of employees. So the calculation ought to be bumped up by at least 120 gallons per day, even if it's just the quote-unquote 3 staff people and 9 residents at the facility. That puts you right at 1,300 gallons per day. It puts you at 75. It puts you at over 1,300 gallons per day. So that needs to be addressed. It needs to be dealt with. And in addition, the selling report does not say they conducted any sort of independent test. They simply rely upon test pit data provided to them by Mr. Callahan, and we don't know who did the test pits, where they actually pitted the area, given that the septic's already installed on this property. Similarly, it needs to be clarified, for everyone's sake, that the house is not hooked up to this septic. I've not seen anything in any of the minutes or approvals dating back to 2006, when this parcel was subdivided off, that somehow the house is disconnected from the septic. I raise this as an issue because DES is concerned about this on the drinking water side of this matter. This facility, whatever its configuration, is not registered with DES for its drinking water supply, and it needs to be registered for it, including any change in the use. But one of the issues raised by DES is whether or not the house is connected to the existing water wells. I haven't dealt with subsurface yet on this issue, but there's certainly nothing in the records that we've been able to find so far that indicates that the house was ever separated off from the septic. So that needs to be addressed before any sort of approval can be considered on this property. Now, the policies and procedures. Mark was kind enough to talk to you folks about how these folks need a license. What they are offering, and I agree, they need a license. I said that before at the last hearing under 151A. They need a license, some way, shape, or form from Health and Human Services. Whether you are the chicken or the egg here, you need to know what that license is and that they have the approval to get that before they actually are allowed to operate. So whether you folks grant a conditional approval, potentially someday, with respect to this, conditional upon them getting the license, you not only need to see what the license is, but make sure that it's appropriate for this facility. As well as the fact, and I raised this last time, I expect that that license will require them to obtain a variance. And let's talk about your zoning a little bit in that regard. Your zoning does not permit any sort of rooms for rent, hotel space, inn space, etc. in the rural agricultural zone. You can't rent rooms or suites out in that zone, no matter how you slice it under your zoning ordinance. Similarly, you can't have any type of medical facility under your zoning ordinance in the RA zone. You can't have a hospital there, you can't have a nursing home there, you can have a doctor's office there. So what these folks are asking you to do is they're asking you to say, even though I can't do these things individually, if I combine them together, we can go in the zone. That's not right. That's not what your zoning ordinance says. They're disguising it as an adult care facility. But just because you call it an adult care facility, and especially since the town has not defined adult care facility, if you can't do all the things that that quote-unquote adult care facility says is combined in there individually, how can you do it in a combined manner? This is where this facility simply does not fit in this zone. I don't care how big or how small you make it, it doesn't belong in this zone because you are combining essentially rooms for rent with some type of treatment here that is simply not allowed under your zoning ordinance. Now, people talk about the ADA. And the ADA doesn't trump your zoning. Your ADA prohibits you and prevents you from discriminating against people because of their disability. That's not the case here. Okay? Your zoning is completely neutral on its face. So that part of any potential ADA or FHA violation does not exist. So the question is, are you applying your zoning in a manner that is discriminatory to the folks treated in the facility simply because of their condition? And the answer to that is no. You folks should deny this facility because you can't let people pay for rooms in that zone. You should be denying this facility because you can't have a licensed medical facility in this zone. It has nothing to do with their disability or their familial status or any of those things that people raise with respect to an ADA or FHA challenge. Those simply do not apply here when you actually look at the facts. And for that reason alone, this facility should not be applied. should not be allowed. Now, even if you think that it should, you folks as a planning board cannot abdicate your responsibility to regulate people regulate applicants with respect to reasonable time and use. And there's nothing else that's allowed to be used that is a for-profit type enterprise in this zone that is 24 hours. You can't have businesses in this zone. And you certainly shouldn't be allowed to operate 24 hours a day. And that's what these folks are asking you to do. And that shouldn't be allowed. If you are inclined to approve some type of facility like this, you need to take a stand and regulate it properly so that it doesn't completely destroy this zone and what the people out there who live there have tried to get when they bought in Tilton, New Hampshire in the rural agricultural zone as opposed to a free-for-all. Thank you very much. I can answer any questions you have.
Thank you. We have a lot of people on this next page that didn't put yes or no, so again, at the end, if you wish to. Theo Brackett?
My name is Theo Brackett. I live at 197 Cram Road in Semberton. My first part's actually a question for my wife, and forgive me if I don't relay it properly. She's at work right now. She's smarter than I am, so I'm doing the best I can. She wants me to ask if they can tell us what kind of medical treatment they will provide, level of care, and she wants to know that, similar question to what Byron had, based upon regulations in other states, seems as though licensure requirements would necessitate a medical treatment facility, medical treatment services. Since this area is not zoned for that, what will happen when that comes to pass? So they say they're now only seeking to have 9 beds. That's still 94 to 234 strangers circulating through our neighborhood every year, depending on how many weeks every person stays. Kind of like having a hotel down the road, smaller hotel. And also like to raise concern about the fact, the recent news that Mr. Callahan intends to circumvent or satisfy the maximum ratio of impervious surface by acquiring additional land and merging the lots, I believe is an indication of what is to come. I believe the pattern will be that they start their operations, they devalue the land around the area, they acquire that land, and then they expand. So kind of where does it end, I guess. And I also have the same concerns as before. They plagiarized on their application materials. As far as I can tell from researching the company that's going to manage it online, they have no expertise. They only claim to be reimbursement specialists. It doesn't seem like they're experts at this, so that makes me concerned for people who are going to be there for treatment, as well as the effects it's going to have on me and my neighbors. And that's it.
Thank you. Isaac Sargent.
Hi, Isaac Sargent with the Samberton resident on Philbrook Road. I have 3 questions, thoughts that I'd like to share. The first one has to do with, doing the environmental study and the rainwater runoff. I agree, yes, the intersection there has been paved and that will have an impact on what rainwater will do there. But it was also mentioned that that entire lot was clear cut, and without, a forest there, that will make a pretty tremendous impact on what's going to happen with all that rainwater falling in that space. Second, in terms of reducing the unit down to, or reducing the proposal down to 9 units, I think that's nice, a nice idea in order to kind of push things through. But it's been clear from the beginning and even still that they intend to grow this facility from 9 to 16 to 24, possibly 30 beds, in which case I think it would be appropriate to see that there are real future plans in place for how they're going to manage some of these issues. If they intend to grow the facility and there's still these parking lot issues, septic issues, how is it possible? Because as of the way it is right now, it's just not. Those 2 things don't line up? How can you grow this facility to more residents if you can't, fit more than 9 people in there? That's crazy. And my last thing was just kind of a simple question: is that do they intend to have any sort of overdose medication there, just in case, Narcan on the premises? Will they have people trained in administering that? And those are my 3 points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Scott Manty?
Scott Manty, 236 Cram Road, Samberton. I'd like to speak for a moment on what the personal effect is. We have a lot of details, and the details are important, and being able to figure out exactly what needs to be done or what is or not going to be done. But I want for a moment for you to consider, if you decided to buy a house in this area, what are the things that you would take into account? And maybe you've lived there all your life, or maybe you're going to retire there, but the fact is that some of the things that you take into account are the people, the environment, what it has or doesn't have, and the overall effect that it has on your family and all those sorts of components. So imagine that sort of environment is where you start to feel comfortable, you feel happy, and you feel secure. Imagine that somebody tries to take that away from you. What would you do? What would be the components that you would need to consider with that? So what happens, we have all these debates going on about how much is going to reduce this as far as housing costs, or what's going to be done, or what the groundwater is, and those are all great details. But the one fact that is absolutely true is that all of these things are going to be forced upon us as being residents in the area. And as far as I can see with this facility, I don't see any net additive value to us as homeowners or property owners in the area. I only see us as trying to figure a way of ameliorating or getting around what the issues are. Security issues, or people are going to be running up and down the road, or where are our kids going to meet for the bus stop. And that's the fact that is behind it. So I think the question that as we come down into this is there's really nothing here in our best interest. And so the question is, do the desires of one usurp and basically are a priority over the desires or the background that the rest of the group has? Is it just one over everyone else? We all have the right of happiness. We have the right of our environment. And so I think if things change, we would say we did not sign up for this. That this is not what we either grew up with, we bought, or those kinds of components. And I think that's the way that our society and our environment is. At least that's some of the choices I think that we've made. I think that's a value we have. We have that right for pursuit of happiness. It's America. Let's start acting like it. Thank you.
Tom Mead. Didn't put anything else up. Is there anybody else that, Tom, did you wish to speak?
No.
Okay. Did anyone else? Everyone else I have is...
I didn't sign that.
That's fine. I can put you down.
Hi, I'm Lisa Parsons. I live at 59 Autumn Drive, almost directly across the street. I have a couple questions just about the facility in general. Number one, I've never seen it mentioned. Are these people going to be allowed to go outside? Where would they go?
This is just for testimony? This is actually...
I'm just asking. I'm curious about that and about the security. Security cameras are great, but is somebody manning them 24 hours a day? And also, in regards to the stormwater issue, we live across the street and we are affected. And I took a picture on July 4th of can I show you a picture?
Sure.
Of a clogged storm drain right at the top of his driveway. That's July 4th. I mean, that's summertime.
Thank you.
That's pretty full. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was going back.
And living across the street and walking the road frequently, it appears to me that they do have a wet septic field, but I'm not an expert, but we just replaced the septic system, and I know the symptoms. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Was there anybody else from the public that wished to speak? I don't know. I'll be to you. Go ahead, Jim. Go ahead. No, I'll be right to you after.
Hi guys, John Kelly, 74 Cram Road. And I have no paperwork. I can only talk from my heart. That since day one, they have changed plans to us every meeting, except for 3 that didn't show up. So to me, it doesn't strike me as a well-oiled machine here. One gentleman's saying he just got a phone call about last night about one of the 4 problems. 2 minutes before the meeting, our paperwork's coming here. But to me, it just, how we're even at this point is beyond. Shouldn't it have just gone through the zoning board, then come to you? I'm just mystified at why we're at this point when they're bringing paperwork in the last second every time. May I ask you guys a question? Is there federal regulations for this? I understand they're trying to push this down our throat because the federal laws are not in place yet. Would it make sense to all parties, all the towns, that we wait for the federal laws to come, and then there is no problems with the federal law is the federal law? Instead of us saying, okay, because he will never change a thing once he has his permit now. It's your town. I live in Sanperton. But I can throw a rock and hit his building. So you guys have to make a decision for a lot of people here. And I know they're stuffing it down your throat to pass it down. Why don't we step back, make sure everything is right, and then we'll make a decision. But I think they just want it done this year so they can say to you, oh, too bad, you voted already. We don't have to change anything. They're starting with 9 people. Our first meeting, they wanted 16. Every time I come here, they're changing the plan, if they do show up. So, to you people, from my heart, you gotta, it's like it's your home there to me. So you gotta decide that, enough is enough. Or, this is starting at 9. Before you know it, it's gonna be 34 people. My 3 kids wanna live in that house. It's not gonna happen with this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Scott Parsons, 59 Autumn Drive. A couple of things that I'd like to go back to the original engineering report for the septic system of that property. There is no documentation of what that leach field is. The gentleman who did the original engineering report said in his report that all the numbers that are calculated from here forward were based on the owner's recollection of what that leach field is. We have no documentation for what that is. So if you ask me, any of these figures we're all talking about are really arbitrary. I would also ask the board to take a look at the history of that property and the non-compliance. I've been to all these meetings since the original indoor soccer field. And there has been non-compliance from day one. I can go through a list of them, but you know what they are. Now, maybe with a soccer field, indoor soccer field, and kids playing soccer, non-compliance may mean not too much, okay? But now you're asking the neighborhood to deal with a facility that has a little more weight to it than an indoor soccer field. I said, and I'm saying to you that the non-compliance that you've dealt with for 6, 7, 8 years, I don't see it ending. So messing around with non-compliance with a facility like this is asking for trouble. The non-compliance things that you don't even know about is you said way back when we allowed the indoor soccer field that his hours were not supposed to go past 9 o'clock. Well, I got news for you. I live across the street and there have been many games going past 10 o'clock. Okay? Also, parking. when whatever is happening over there doesn't adequately handle the parking, guess where they're parking? They're parking on Autumn Drive, okay? So all these non-compliance things, to me, just raises a big question. So we want to let this gentleman, who doesn't seem to be compliant in a lot of areas, run this kind of facility. That's all I have.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
May I address some of the last items?
No. Hang on. No. We're just taking testimony. We're not answering questions, are we?
I suppose that's up to you. There were some questions asked that I think some questions asked by someone. It's really typical.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. A couple of themes appear regularly through the comments in the public, that this is a medical facility, treatment facility, words of that nature are used, and it's not. It's an adult recovery facility, and this board approved that as a use of this facility, this land, in May, and it's an unappealed decision. So that isn't really even before us anymore. Really what's before us here is only the site plan approval for the already approved adult recovery facility approved by this board 3 months ago tomorrow. In terms of licensure, this is a recovery facility, it's not a medical facility. There is no medical treatment, there is no therapy, there is no treatment of any kind of that nature. It is a recovery facility. There is no licensure required at all for that type of facility. There may be some in New Hampshire one day, but there isn't today. If there is, my clients will certainly become licensed as required by the state, but they are not required to now. There's a suggestion that the septic is in failure. It's not in failure. And there have been people out on the site, including Mr. Keach, and it's not in failure. It's the septic system is not in failure. And at 12 people, as we projected here, does fit within the various rules by the Department of Environmental Services. It does fit. It's 1275, so it does work. To prove, there's a suggestion that we need to prove the negative, prove that the adjacent house doesn't use the system. The adjacent house has its own system, which is apparent, but it's unnecessary. We don't need to prove a negative. There's a suggestion that this is a disguise, and this is a facility that's being snuck in and jammed down your throats. It couldn't be further from the truth. The repeated changes to the plan are in response to concerns raised by the community, by this board, and by the third-party reviewer. It's not some kind of shit hiding the ball. What we've tried to do is be responsive to the concerns that have been raised by the people in this room and others. Again, it's not a medical, there will be no medical treatment, no license required for any medical treatment. And it's all, I don't need to go into the details, some of the things that people said about, about the behavior, people might be there, can they go outside, should they be inside, should they always be on camera, things of that nature. This is already approved. This is an adult recovery facility, which is existing under the town zoning easement. This board approved it as a use of the property on May 9th. So really what we're dealing with here tonight, in our view, is the 4 site plan approval matters raised by Mr. Keach, and not the other matters of essentially usage of the property. So my clients believe tonight that they've been here, I think this is the 6th time on this matter. They've been as responsive and compliant to the requests of both the board, the town, and the third-party reviewer as they can be, and that they are entitled to approval of their site plan, so they can move forward with their approved plan. Sure, please.
So is there an approved septic design in Concord for the sports facility and for the house? And could we get a copy of it?
Pre-existing.
So then how do we know that it is what it is if there's no approved plans stamped by an engineer?
Went out there, went out there with a plumber, we scoped it, we measured the field, we went down with a hammer on all the outlets, and dug around the whole perimeter, we did the perk test, that's how it came back.
So a licensed subsurface designer has reviewed it and agreed that it's to that design? Could I get a copy of that then?
The report you have says that there is no report, there is no documentation.
So we'll close it to public comment. Does the board have any additional questions? No, we closed it to the public.
Can you speak in there a little bit louder? It's hard to hear. Can't really hear.
We closed it to the public comment.
Okay.
Does the board have any additional comments or questions?
I have one.
Yes.
You were bringing up that there was not going to be any licensed staff there, and at one point during one of the prior meetings, you said there was going to be a licensed nurse.
No, not
Yeah.
nurse.
So that if they needed to take their thyroid medicine or whatever.
That's not a licensed nurse, so this is the term that is used. It's a medical assistant. She does not require a license. She is medication trained, period. To make sure that a person is taking their own medications prescribed by a doctor in accordance with his orders. That's all it is.
My friend's licensed.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to continue. Oh, darn, what's something?
Oh, I'm sorry, Darry.
No, that's all right. Yeah, so I think, if I could summarize, I think I have some thoughts on things that, if you are going to make a motion to continue, you might want to request. I do think a drainage analysis is necessary. I think a septic evaluation, I'm not sure the terminology, but to have a licensed septic inspection. Is that right, Mr. Fogg?
Something along, a licensed installer, at least review what's out
Yeah,
there.
it says consultant on the report we have.
I would also, if you are, I would recommend that the planning board does need time to look at these plans that were just delivered, so that would be not necessarily something that needs to be done, but a reason for why you need to continue. What's the other thing? Oh, and then there have been, I think all the plans have shown a variety of parking configurations. I think they've changed a little bit with each plan. Now we do have, with the reduced number of beds, there should be a reduced, and the elimination of all the other uses, there should be a reduced parking demand, and it would seem that the applicant would be able to meet, to address some of those issues that were brought up by Attorney Bedard about parking lot sizes not being necessarily the full 9 by 19 and driving lanes not being the full 24 feet in areas where there's two-way traffic. And in doing so, that might that can go along with the drainage report to show, address pervious, non-pervious, and how pervious areas are being addressed. One other thing, I I know that was mentioned, something about a final concession of documenting the elimination of other uses. I don't know, I guess I'd leave that one up to you. I don't have a feeling. I just wanted to remind you that was one other thing that was brought up as a possible, another element the board might want to see. And then the other thing is, this, the applicant waived the 60, the requirement that the board provide a decision in 65 days to get to this meeting. But I believe if you were going to continue again, we would need to, again, secure an additional waiver to bring us to the next meeting. So that the applicant would need to waive, again, that requirement that the board make a decision. Oh, yes, and then lastly, thank you. In addition to sort of the parking and stormwater recalculating and re-representing, snow storage should also be addressed. Again, this is without having the benefit of looking at what was just turned in, so some of that may be on there. I don't know.
I have everything that you brought up except the different businesses, so I don't know how we want to do that. They come in for all those things that were on their signage. They came in for at various times in the planning board had those, so I don't know what changes have been made.
Now, are they required to register for drinking water?
Not under 25.
Okay.
Julie, are we taking any questions?
Let's close
Now
the
close it
public.
to the public.
All right, I have these three
Did we
things.
have
and I
a
don't-
comprehensive lighting plan?
Well, no one received what this plan is.
Okay.
That's the problem. They don't know what this plan says.
You accepted evaluation from a license.
Because down here you've got buildings on there proposed, and then in this plan it had some proposed listed.
Revised
Highlighted.
They're gonna bring them to the nearest. Need anything else? These are the three things. We don't want to get into that, so what are these?
Okay. Septic evaluation.
Stormwater management plan. Parking lot diagram, a revised parking lot diagram with showing the snow storage.
Okay, so about the formal concession, you don't want to do that?
I don't know.
Abandon this.
Increase in uses requires coming back.
And they have them, they come in.
Yeah, that's good.
They come in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. That's good.
I have a few. That's up to them.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to continue until the following three requirements are satisfied. A formal stormwater management plan and a septic evaluation by a licensed septic consultant and a revised parking lot diagram, updating it with the width and with the lanes and with snow storage. Okay? And what dates do you have?
Yeah, I mean, before you vote on this motion, I think you should secure, that the applicant will waive, again, their right to have a decision made tonight. obviously you demonstrated that you don't have enough for you to make an affirmative decision, so you would think they would agree to that, but you should do that.
That's true.
I could just second it.
The applicant would waive the environment work based on a motion with the expectation that we deal with it back there as soon as practical in the town council.
This would be the one.
Okay, second the motion.
Well, I'd like to add to the motion where we haven't looked at the new plans, that there could be something coming out of there, because I asked about the lighting plan, and so I really don't know if there's going to be more.
Well, yeah, but then we would, but that, for right now, if they satisfy, we know right now, these three things we need satisfied before we move
We're not
forward.
saying there's nothing else, we're saying that.
Sorry, one more thing. You may have to amend your motion if you concur. Do you want to have any additional information submitted about background checks, the sequence of how they take place? There was some mention of off-site versus on-site. I don't know if the board wants more on that.
I need more time to review that one. No, just I haven't sat down and reviewed it. I don't know about everybody else.
Anything else?
Yep. So we have to vote. Yes. Yes.
To see if there's any more.
So then you would also want to set a date, and I think the first meeting in September is September 12th.
I think we have to vote first.
No, you should have, if you're making a motion to continue.
Oh, it's continued until September 12th.
Yeah. September 12th.
And did you second?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anybody wishing to abstain? So be it. So we will continue this on the 12th. Well, it's them still. I will ask if you're leaving to please go all the way downstairs because we still have to continue the meeting. Attorney that will stay after, so.
Yes, definitely.
Request that you do that. So now it's just the.
Yeah, I mean, so the police, if they need a background check. So it's charged.
We just got.
I think there it is. Well, it's out here. I know, and I don't we have enough in here.
You're going to stay till after, right?
Stick around.
Yeah.
These guys.
I would just Yes. They say they're not. We say they are. Okay, Planning Board Case 17-11, subdivision lot line adjustment proposed from Robert Callahan to annex 1.5 acres from lot R6-10 to R6-2 at 80 and 10 Autumn Drive in the Rural Agricultural District.
Now,
If you're a larger
He presents it.
Yeah,
We got to review the application.
I looked at the application. We got the lot, we got two lots.
Yeah.
Did everybody look at the application?
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
It's in the bottom of the file. It's a lot, yeah. So we're getting too much paper. 17-1.
I'm going to make a motion to accept the application for Planning Board Case 17-11 as substantially complete.
I'll second that.
Any conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so be it.
We have one abstention.
I'm just recusing myself again.
Thank you. All right, do we have any discussion on the application?
Well, they're supposed to show us, right?
What their thoughts are?
Straightforward.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from
I know we do have some neighbors that wish to speak on it. Do we have anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this?
Nope.
Okay, we'll close it to the public. Anything else from the board?
Not on application. We're going to do a presentation. Is in, I might have a question.
Mr. Callahan, are you going to present your lot line adjustment for us? Are you going to present to the
Lot
board
line
what
adjustment?
you're discussing doing?
Yeah.
Oh, bring them up.
Well, we just, we need to cover the green space one. So we went over to the neighbors who purchased and sell the property. And well, we've got a deposit and a purchase and sale. As soon as if we go through, we'll do it. We'll have proper documentation for all you guys. Cover the lot line, the respectable way to the town of one.
Miss?
That's what we did.
Will there be any alterations to the property?
No, there will be nothing done to the property.
You're doing it just to
totally-
add green space to
That's
your...
correct.
Right.
Nothing will change.
Okay.
What's on there?
Just like a hill, trees, it's nothing.
Undeveloped land.
Have you seen it?
Yeah. Undeveloped land.
You drive by and look out in the back, it's there.
At least once a week I go. Come here, I'm not gonna use it.
The board have any questions?
No. I think so.
This is just a top of my head thing.
Yeah.
You said that's a hill. If that's a hill, that's going to add water, again, when you
It's
do the
not like you'll
storm
get a hill,
water.
it's just a little more, not even wrong, it's more of a knoll, it's not, it just goes up a little bit. It's nothing that's gonna add any more that's been there for 150 years, you know?
Well,
So no changes.
buying it's going to change how your drainage is anyway.
No, it's the same.
Yeah, I know, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Anything else? No? Do you have a motion?
I'll make a
Can I
motion
take
to
the
accept the
blame off the...
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you.
make a motion to accept the lot line
Yeah.
adjustment
Yeah.
to case number
1711.
1711.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? So be it. Thank you. Yes, we're going to take a quick 3-minute break. Would you?
Downstairs, there's 2 of them.
Oh, yeah.
You're welcome.
Well,
These are on?
let's turn them off.
You can push that.
Could you turn these off for a moment? please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. That work?
What's that?
I know they just said like a 3-week break if you want to wait until everything's all done.
Yeah, no problem. This year, by the way, is she
We're very nice. Go, Eric.
And then we have an invisible member to make sure that, we have an invisible member to make sure that our covered. Camera shows.
Yeah, right.
Yes, the hours at that end of the table.
You look totally different.
Eric stole my, yes, he stole my seat Not that I remember. Maybe over in Belmont.
All right, thank you. Oh, yeah. All right, here we go.
Thank
Well,
you.
mics are on, I gotta be good.
Okay, on to planning board case 17-12, conditional use permit, wetlands conservation district. Proposal from Eversource to rebuild the existing L167 transmission line in the existing right-of-way beginning at the town border of Tilton and Franklin, just north of Shannon Road, approximately at 2 Matthews Road, traveling northeasterly through the existing right-of-way and terminating at the Tilton-Belmont town border at the Winnipesaukee River, approximately 401 Silver Lake Road, in the rural agricultural industrial resort commercial medium residential district.
It's a mouthful.
Does anyone want me to list all the maps that are covered?
Just for fun, let's
Right
say
here.
bingo.
R1, R13, R14, R15, R18, R19, R20, R21, R23, U3.
Bingo. Bingo.
All right, has everyone had an opportunity to review the application?
Yes.
Just a pile of paperwork, I don't know where it was. Okay. Thank you.
I'm assuming that there wasn't a list attached of the butters?
There was, yeah.
That was not to us.
Yeah, there is.
Well, it says 53 abutters, so.
Yeah. I can certainly
It's
get
on the
that for
you
you.
can,
Like,
online you can get it.
I don't really want it online. Making sure we cross everything off.
Yes, thank you.
Make a motion to accept the application.
Yes.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So be it. We also have a note here from Tilton Conservation Commission.
Just like the actual applicant, the whole plan.
oh, yeah, here's copies of the application. I didn't want to print them out because they're.
But you did.
No, I didn't. These are much prettier than anything I.
Spokesperson.
Yes, ready for me?
Yes, please.
So thanks so much for your time tonight. My name is Tracy Tarr. I'm a wetland scientist with GZA. I'm here with the larger Eversource team. Walt Belinsky is the Eversource project manager. I'm here with Garrett Lusky, the project engineer from TRC, and Donna Keeley, who is with Siting and Construction and deals with municipal outreach. So thanks again. I have extra plan copies I can hand out if that's helpful to the board. Should we start?
Eric doesn't have it.
And these are to scale. Being a linear project, it makes more sense in the field to see how everything relates together with an 11 by 17. So that is why these are typically done this way. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you do, it's the first floor.
Yeah, you do.
No, no, there's another pest house up further.
And then bear with
No,
me
that
here.
is your pest house.
We'll be there.
We are proposing a slight change that I'll talk about. Due to one of our previous access points being a private road instead of a public road. So we want to correct that tonight with you. So I will talk about that. Thanks. But I want to be clear on what's changing, so I thought several times for that. Okay, give you a little background before we get into the plans. The L176 transmission line extends from Franklin to Laconia. It's roughly 13.5 miles long. In your town, the line is roughly 4.5 miles long. And there are approximately 48 structure replacements, only 6 of which are in wetlands. And where possible, structures were moved out of wetlands and moved out of wetland buffers where possible. But there are span requirements, which Garrett can get into if you like more of the technical information, that require us to be in some wetlands, which is why, in part, we're in front of you. The line was originally built during 1977 and has really shown significant signs of wear. When modeled, most of the structures, over 80%, don't meet current requirements and are predicted to fail, which obviously is not something Eversource would like to see. If the poles fail, the line goes down on the ground and the line doesn't work anymore. So we want to correct for that. And then also, on average, each pole has roughly 14 woodpecker holes, if you want a little fact. So because of that, the structures, and structure is just a fancy word for utility pole, are proposed to be replaced from wood to steel, because the woodpeckers obviously can't affect steel the way they can wood. So that's one change. But overall, this is a true replacement project where in most cases structures are replacing structures that will be removed, and they're in very close proximity to the existing structure. And it's literally to maintain the existing line. There are no new transmission or distribution lines proposed. There's no expansion of the right-of-way than from what's currently there. And again, it's maintenance. So I can get into the impacts if you like, or we can point you to the plans. Does that sound good?
Yes.
All right. So you can see the locus on the front. If you want to open up to page 1. Those yellow lines are where you propose access for where machinery would typically enter the right-of-way to access those structures. And those orange squares are, we tend to call them work pads, where machinery will typically be focused to access, stabilize the existing poles and the proposed poles and place them in the ground, drill the poles. And so wherever those squares overlap a wetland buffer or wetland, we've called that wetland impact. But the nice outcome is that all of those temporary impacts are restored at the end of the project. Things are regraded to prior condition and they're seeded and mulched. And so what was vegetated before will ultimately be revegetated again using native seed mixes. And the other nice part of the project is that we do regular construction monitoring and work with the contractors in the field to make sure whatever permit conditions you place as part of your local permit and what the state places as part of their wetlands permit are in fact met. We do weekly construction monitoring reports and work with them regularly. And then of course there are erosion controls placed. Straw wattle is typically used. It has less of a footprint than silt fence, but if silt fence is needed, it would be utilized where allowed. And then gravel access pads are typically placed off of pavement areas to make sure we're not tracking on roads. And another fun outcome too is that Fishing Game asks us to monitor for turtles and snakes in those access roads and pads, so we would safely remove snakes and turtles to protect wildlife in the right of way.
An osprey.
Yeah, so what's interesting is through the course of this project, when we started, osprey was special concern. They've since been downgraded, but Fish and Game originally suggested a seasonal restriction where the closest pole wouldn't be worked on during active nesting season, and that's not a problem at all. So we're happy with that.
Do you know anything about the blue spotted salamander? That's supposed to be in the area, is that not?
It's not on the NHB reports, but good news, we did not vernal pools and we do not impact any vernal pools.
Okay, thank you.
That's one of my favorite topics.
Where are all those woodpeckers going? Well, if there's that many, I mean, you got condos right now.
The poles, they're damaging them, but not typically living in them, so I can do it.
If you have woodpecker condos, we need them.
Next year we'll be back before the town with people complaining of woodpeckers in their yards.
And then the only other kind of unique item in Tilton is if you go to page 2. And those numbers you see at the pole locations, the proposed poles are in red. At roughly 43, and I'll wait to see that you can find that number.
Yeah.
There is an existing distribution pole, which requires something called a SCADA switch. And the nice thing, switch goes on top of the existing pole. And the nice thing is that when that switch is on, when there's an outage in one distribution line, somebody in Manchester can flip a switch, so to speak, and turn on the next line to reduce times and outages. But like any equipment, it needs to be maintained. So a small gravel access pad is proposed partly on an upland island and partly over wetland out of necessity to provide long-term access to that pad. Again, it's just gravel, it's not pavement. And maximizing the use of that upland. The owner has given written authorization to include it. And most of that road is an existing woods road, so it's not actually adding a road, other than right to that gravel pad.
Do you want a candy?
No waste of AC in here, right?
Candy if you want.
So we did meet with the Conservation Commission, and I believe we incorporated their input. Of course, you can share the results of the report. We did actually reduce the size of that gravel pad. It had been a 50 by 50. We shrunk it down to a 30 by 50 to respect wetlands and buffers. And so those permanent impacts were changed.
It says 30 by 30 here, you said 30 by 50.
Excuse me, I said it wrong. It's on the plan. The only other things that I'd like to point to are those separate plan sets I handed out to you. We did receive information after submittal that Wolf Road, although it looks like a public road, is in fact private. We did speak with Dari today. He believes it's a private road. So, unless that owner grants us permission, we don't have explicit rights to be on it. So we had to take the access road off of Wolf Road, where we're maximizing use of uplands, and come in from the other side. So you'll see we took off the access road on page 13 and extended off of Dublin Drive. Fortunately, it doesn't have any permanent wetland impact, but it does increase our temporary impact slightly for the extension of the road to that pad.
I don't have a page 13.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not sure this.
Go on through the page. Oh, I got you.
So,
Yeah.
It's an actual road.
Yeah.
There's a few houses up there.
Oh, really?
if for some reason we received permission later and it was acceptable to the underlying owner, we could switch to that access, but really we can't at this point assume we have rights to that. So we would respectfully ask that we add that temporary impact. Again, temporary, it will be restored. But overall, permanent wetland impacts are still relatively small, smaller than, for instance, a certain average driveways at 1,226 square feet for the poles. And a nice outcome was 3 were moved out of wetlands where they could be, based on allowable span distances, moved out of wetlands. Any questions?
You said all these yellow lines are access roads, there's a lot of yellow lines.
So, you can see coming off the road, that yellow access leading to the pad. And what we do though is wherever we can, we utilize existing, whether it's ATV trails or other access routes rather than blaze a new trail in the right of way where we can.
They're mostly existing.
Yes, yeah, in many cases.
What prevents, obviously, a lot of these areas right now are brush and overgrown, but now you're gonna be creating temporary roads. What measures are taken to prevent people with four-wheelers, OHRV vehicles from going up there, say on the weekend, and causing damage to a wetland or even private property?
So there are some cases where boulders are sometimes put across access ways. If they were there, for instance, before, they would typically be replaced. And then during construction, it's a pretty active zone where during work that random people wouldn't actually be allowed to ride on those access roads. What I neglected to mention is in wetlands, timber matting is placed if you've ever seen construction on a right-of-way.
What is that timber matting? What is that for those of us who don't know?
Literally timber logs that are
Square timbers, and they just bolt them together into big sections and lay them as mats.
And it's a really neat process where they're taken up at the end of the project and they reduce rutting, and within a year, typically you see vegetation pop right up. And I like it because it really confines contractors to this is your road in the wetlands. helps everybody.
The Conservation Commission had a question on page 6, and you agreed it would be modified. Has that modification been made?
I believe so. I think they asked us to add Osprey information. Did you have any detail there?
It says the commissioners also noted that the symbols for primary and secondary access on page 6 of the plans look pretty much the same. It was agreed that they would be modified.
So yeah, in the legend, it's a little hard because it's such a small legend, but you'll see secondary access is clearly this dashed line. And basically, primary access, that's just code for it's in the right-of-way where Eversource is allowed to be. If it's secondary, they need permission, which they would seek and obtain for using that secondary access point. And if it needs to be any clearer, we can obviously submit a revised plan, and we welcome you to condition us on that.
When we open it to the public, yes, but we haven't yet. No.
How long does this project take, or what's your estimated start date?
Yeah,
My
so
first question.
estimated in October, lasting a little over a year,
Okay.
working sequentially through the right-of-way.
What times of day do you work?
So we abide by town work hours, and Donna confirms that before we start work. So you can tell us what your work hours are, and we'll abide by this.
You haven't started on the project yet? Because earlier this summer up on Winter Street, we had the matting and on the power line there, I thought. Wasn't it up by Wadley's? Yeah.
Yes.
There are other lines in the right-of-way, and so that might have been a maintenance project that was permitted under utility notification, is my
I
guess.
didn't know who's tied to your project.
Yes, the J125 borders it, and each of these receive a name so we know what we're talking about if the window isn't coming.
Any other questions?
Well, if it's gonna go on for a year, your trucks won't be able to come up during, what season? The big trucks?
So, yeah, so big trucks, so typically what would happen is, if conditions get muddy, stone would be temporarily placed and then removed, so we don't have muddy water going where it should. Yeah, on the road, right? Yeah, the access road? Yeah.
Dirt roads, there's not a lot of big trucks.
So correct, if there was a limit on a road, we couldn't use a road at that time.
Did you have anything else, Eric?
I'm just concerned about, do they work 7 days a week, 5 days a week, 3 days a week, 1 day a week, Monday through Friday?
Whatever your work hours are.
I work 7 days a week, so.
Yeah, on occasion, if it was allowed by the town, let's say we were trying to meet an outage, which certain levels of work have to be done by that outage, there might be some weekend work. Sometimes we'd fall on a Saturday, but if you said no Saturday workmen in your town, we would not.
No, I'm just more concerned about, especially on that private road that you mentioned.
So then we're taking that off.
Right, but I'm just saying, in that general area, we've had an issue with noise before, for something completely unrelated to this.
Okay.
But I just know that early morning, late hours on that particular parcel.
Well, let's look at that and I'll,
But I'm just thinking, I don't want, if I was living there, I wouldn't want someone starting at 6 o'clock in the morning.
I think our noise ordinance is 7.
6.
Oh, yeah, we do have,
Six?
It's 6 to 10, Monday through Friday, Saturdays later, Sundays earlier. Bad nights.
Will there be any power outages?
you won't feel outages, but
But you will.
when we say outage,
You'll feel
some
them.
portions of the line may be taken off, but it's sent to another. Sorry, I shouldn't throw that word around. What, outage?
On your map, page 13 or 8, I just know that in that general area there was some noise. And then on map 14, you're just going through a pretty heavy residential area, so I just worry about those people there.
Okay, well, we can certainly have respectful hours.
It also depends on the time of year.
Well, I know, if it's January, who cares?
Right.
Windows are closed, but if you're out there in the summer, spring months, barbecue season and all that, I don't know,
Yeah.
Whatever the town work hours are.
You're not that noisy.
If you say you allow 7,
It's 6 to 10.
6 to
6
10.
to 10, we won't start any equipment before 6.
Right,
I mean, most of our towns are 7 to 5.
right.
We don't start anything before 7. It's gotta be done by
Sure.
dawn. No idling.
I think just within near residential houses, I think 7 o'clock is reasonable, if I had to say.
Yeah, we could potentially do that in, work often starts with a safety tailboard, so if it pleases the board, maybe we could do the safety tailboard at your normal work start, but not use heavy loud machinery at 7? I don't know if that's a...
But if the town ordinance is 6 to 10, why would you restrict them? Anyone else can start at 6, including the operation you were talking about.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't punish them.
Right.
Well, the longer the hours are, the quicker we'll be out
Right,
here.
that's the flip side, so it's...
Yeah, and I'm sure if you get all those neighbors coming up to you, you probably work it out individually within that.
Well, the ordinance was issued by 5 selectmen, didn't represent a full thing of the town. No one contacted the residents to get their opinion on the work start hours, so.
All residents will be...
No, I'm just talking with...
I'm saying that they would be contacted if someone would be out there. But it's not like they're just showing up.
No, I know,
They would
but
know that.
I'm just protecting the residents of the town.
No, we hear you. We just respect
Well, the other
ourselves.
thing is the leaf coverage in the summer it does mitigate the noise somewhat too.
Hope your windows are open. Winter,
Two,
no leaves,
but
but the
we get
windows are closed.
fireworks all night, so.
Fireworks,
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I can make your head spin off though, I think.
Yes.
All right, so,
I haven't forgotten you, Joyce, by the
a couple
way.
thoughts. Oh, yeah, if I could read my just wrote. Yeah, okay, sorry. I just wanted to ask about how you guys handle this is something somebody brought up today, the interface where you're coming off like a relatively soft gravel shoulder onto pavement. You know, if that were a town road, I'm sure the selectmen are gonna require some, you know,
We do formal 50-foot long construction entrances of stone.
okay.
In some cases, if matting can be used, and it's sensitive, for instance, a lawn, people might not want stone, sometimes matting would be used, but we would definitely not want to see tracking, so we would use stabilized construction entrances.
And so maybe, so where, like, if you're coming off a shoulder onto pavement, it would seem like right where the pavement starts, you could like get like chipping away of that pavement. You see what I'm saying? Do you guys address that?
We
or-
do monitor for that.
Okay,
We do monitor road conditions, and if we saw softness, we would work with the contractor to avoid damage.
okay.
And we do a stormwater pollution prevention plan that addresses some of those items that's in the construction trailer and that's followed. So,
I'll open it to the public.
Joyce? Now they
Now I have to remember what it was. So going back to Wolf Road, so how are you getting in there?
So what we're doing is we're now avoiding Wolf Road. Because it is owned by Mr. Bill's where my eyes are going, but you'll
Bill
see
Wolf.
19 Wolf Road.
Yep.
We have not been able to reach him for permission, so we're proposing access from the other road.
Okay, when you say the...
So the other road, so leading from page 14, from Dublin Drive. That's the only place we have outright access.
Ashland.
Dublin Drive right here.
So that really
They're
limits.
gonna come in this
any
way,
activity
and
on
then that continues.
But that's not in Northfield, Joyce.
Pardon me?
Not in Northfield, so don't worry.
They're on this map.
Harsh
No,
crowd.
the town owns property abutting it.
There's another one.
Yep.
There she's talking, they're gonna come all the way here,
Instead of the other
and
way.
then come to that way, instead of coming in this way.
Okay. And then the other question I had is on some of these road names, like Can you explain where they got some?
Yeah, it's from the DOT road layer on Granite, which is a GIS system. So if you notice something that's not correct because DOT doesn't have it correct, we can easily change it for you.
Have you noticed something?
No, I didn't notice any, but, you know, we've got the, one of our projects. One of our to-do list items.
But a butter information is certainly taken from Tilton's database, so that information's in.
Any other public? Any questions, John?
Did you address fueling and hydraulics fluids, and that would be contained in what different spill supplies you have?
Oh, right, yeah. So, good question. So in the SWIP, there are spill prevention measures. Pretty much every crew needs to have a spill kit where they have absorbent pads and other materials to be ready for spills. And we do document them to help prevent them for Eversource. If they exceed a certain quantity, we would notify DES.
You're over here.
So we do that as part of monitoring.
What type of location would the fueling be done in on the trucks?
Not in wetlands, and we certainly could avoid wetland buffers. It's typically expected to be 100 feet away from a wetland for refueling.
You know, if you have like portable fueling pads or one down or anything?
We certainly can put spill pads down. Yeah.
Case.
Is that new? No, that's, Dr. Higgins. John, come back, John, come back.
John?
Yes.
On the conservation letter we got from them, said no refilling of fuel in the wetlands or on the matting. Vehicles will not park on the matting. When the mats are removed, Eversource will regrade, reseed, and mulch.
Yes.
And that's correct. That's an Army Corps requirement too. We're not allowed to park on mats overnight. Obviously, during the day when you're working, you're on the mats, but no parking overnight and no refueling on the mats.
Do we have any other questions?
More for the ex officio than anything. Do you think we should have the town road agent take pictures of the roads before they cross?
I think they should coordinate with the town road, public works director, because there may also, depending on what's going to happen, need to be a potential bond. If you've got heavy track equipment that's going to cross the road, if it isn't, then it's probably a moot issue, but they just discuss it with them.
Well, I'm just more concerned about town roads, not the state roads. But
Right, no, so, there's a good chunk of state roads, but we got to, when you get down.
Well, Caleb Hill is currently a state road.
That's a state road, School Street, 130, all of those, you'd have to get like Ashlot, Dublin, that area.
I think those are really the only major towns.
There's a few town ones, but not many. I think there's more state roads.
We're happy to coordinate. Not about that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. If you're getting close to making a motion at some point, I have some thoughts for conditions of approval. So that I don't cut you off in mid-motion.
Is anyone getting close to making a motion?
That's a good question. Yes.
Please
Yes,
share.
you want me to share? Okay. So, to address the sound issue, simple condition of compliance with the disorderly actions ordinance. I feel like that would address that. Our ordinance requires Conservation Commission review of conditional use permits in wetlands conditional use permits. Obviously, they've been before the Conservation Commission. I guess the question needs to be answered whether they need to go back because of the changes that were made to address Wolf Road.
We're happy to go back. I don't know if you can condition us on receiving favorable input.
I would recommend that, yeah, because they were happy with your other plan. So the mention from Selectman Scanlon about requiring that spill pads be placed when refilling with fuel, so that could be a potential condition. You have the 3 Conservation Commission items.
The Conservation Commission said there'll be no refilling of fuel on wetlands or matting.
Oh, they mean the wetlands matting, right? So,
It says or on the matting.
okay, so you guys could make that, but right, the matting, like the timber matting, those logs that are chained together, right? But that, wherever they do fill
It's
up.
the same thing, usually matting, most of the time is used on a wetland, so.
Okay, but this is, a spill pad is different than this mat,
Correct.
right? Yeah. So you gotta stay off, my suggestion is to say, they gotta stay off they can't refuel in the wetlands or the matting, and wherever it is they do refuel, they need to use the spill pad. Is that reasonable? Okay.
Yeah, I thought,
That's
so,
that's
already in,
that's
That's
a,
already in the Conservation Commission
Yeah, but
request.
that doesn't mean it's,
All right.
but we have
you
to
know,
make it.
yeah, it has to be.
so isn't that also an Army Corps of Engineers?
It could be. So, I mean, I'm throwing them out there, you don't have to take them. It seems to me that if you included them as conditions of approval, regardless of where else they may show up, you're covered.
It shows up in one place.
And then, the request that they coordinate with the Public Works Director. So,
It's him.
No, I thought we were supposed to put it on the conditions.
All right, I'll make a motion to accept it with the following conditions. Coordinate with the Public Works Director on the road work and
The town roads.
the for the town roads, and also comply with the Conservation Commission's request to no refilling of fuel in the wetlands or on the matting. Vehicles will not park on the matting. The mats are removed. Eversource will regrade, reseed, and mulch. And care will be taken when crossing from the shoulder to the road. Okay?
Can I just make one slight suggestion?
Sure.
That's okay? If we could say no parking and matting overnight, because we'll obviously have to park during the
Okay,
day.
all right.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do you have another question there?
well, just
Still in line.
going back potentially, I don't, did you decide that you don't think they need to go back to the Concom? You know, I haven't had a chance just now to evaluate how significant of a change, but I mean, when I look at it, it looks like they're going a fair distance through a wetland. Again, chances are the Concom will be fine with it, but the ordinance requires
Just
conditional
revisit
use
it.
permits to be signed off by the Concom.
And revisit Concom.
Right.
Did we get it all?
Did you do disorderly actions compliance?
Yeah, it was the first one.
That's not what what I have as the first one is DPW contact the DPW director
That was the
for
first.
town roads. Comply with Concom 1, 2, and 3, take care of the shoulder to the road, revisit the Concom,
Add disorderly.
disorderly, did you want to add that, Ms. Alden?
Yes, disorderly.
All right.
Didn't you say that?
That's four things?
Got 5.
5.
So contact DPW director for town roads, comply with the Concom elements and add overnight to number 2. Third, take care where the shoulder meets the road on town roads. 4, maybe it should be revisit, this is contingent upon positive, or what did you say, Ms. Alden? Revisit the Concom, I guess was your words.
Yep.
And then compliance with the disorderly actions, number 5.
Huh?
You said something about if you want to have a spill pad? You do that?
No,
Covered under best practices.
it is.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? So be it.
Good. Thank you.
Go forth and electrocute.
So what?
Keeps the powder ready. Come cut my tree down.
I have a question. What about, let's have less conditions, let's put time on our.
This one's a shorter one. There's a lot of things that are 4 or 5 hours. Those are fun.
Conversation on that in the workshop.
That's it.
That's gonna be.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so,
Dari, do we have any correspondence?
No, there was relating to case 1704, Tim Joubert approved, I think you picked that letter up.
We have a copy of that.
Okay, so yeah, no, that's all I got.
Do we have any other business?
We're gonna send Gary the list.
Yes. We'll send you ahead of time lists
Okay.
we have, questions we have, so that we can make the time more valuable when we're meeting.
I went to Kew.
Do I have a motion to
Make a motion to adjourn?
adjourn? All those in favor?
Hi. That's all on the contract.
So be it.
Wait, when's our next meeting?
following all conditions
Sorry.
and permits.
You do know that before the meetings, have the mic shut off, the camera, please.
Oh, boy.